moving forward. New developments in the nomination of Catholic Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. We have a report and analysis. Road to the White House. President Donald Trump rallies crowds in North Carolina ahead of tonight's town hall meetings. Democratic nominee Joe Biden campaigns in Pennsylvania. A commitment to teaching. Pope Francis is among those addressing the future of education. We have a report from Rome. And flocking to Assisi. Officials make an announcement about recently beatified teen Carlo Acutis. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, October 15th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. A contentious morning on Capitol Hill today. Senate Democrats and Republicans argue over whether to move forward in the Judiciary Committee with the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales was there. Eric.
Well, Tracy, committee members from both parties presented witnesses both for and against Judge Amy Coney Barrett in her confirmation hearing, and their testimony came before a political firestorm, actually, when Democrats tried to stop the proceedings from continuing. But it was words caught during an open mic that may be the most revealing.
On an open microphone, Senate Judiciary Committee ranking member Dianne Feinstein is heard contemplating Judge Amy Coney Barrett's personal opinions on abortion.
She's been pro-life for a long time, so I suspect with her it is a deep disrespect personally, and it comes with a religion.
Senator Feinstein's words came after a fiery back and forth between senators of both parties. Democrats first boycotted a committee vote, voting against it by proxy.
No by proxy. No by proxy.
And then laid out why they think the nomination should not move forward.
This rushed sham process is a disservice to our committee.
You're just trying to ram through this justice.
Chairman Graham asked his Democratic colleagues to extend the same courtesy to conservative nominee Judge Barrett that conservative senators applied to nominees under President Obama.
It wasn't hard for me to figure out that Sotomayor and Kagan were of a disposition different than I have, but I trusted them in the big moments to apply the law and not turn it upside down. And they have been with a liberal majority, but I don't believe they've been activist judges.
And he defended President Trump for making the nomination.
So to my colleagues, it's okay to have this hearing now. It's okay to vote now because, as Justice Ginsburg said, presidential terms are for 4 years.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to vote on the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett on October 22nd at 1 p.m. Now, Democrats have said that they're going to do anything to stop it, but Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already said that he plans to bring it before the full Senate the very next day, next Friday. Tracy.
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you so much, Eric. And joining me now on Skype to offer his analysis is Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, welcome back. Good to have you on. So the hearings end as they began, divided along party lines. What's your take on this week's hearings?
Well, she's probably one of the most qualified candidates we've had come up before the judiciary hearing. And Democrats were clearly frustrated because they really were unable to shake her. She was testifying with no note, and yet it was almost like watching first-year law students on their first day in class trying to argue with a law professor when you saw Democratic senators trying to question her on cases of all kinds, and she knew them cold and often was correcting them on their legal analysis.
Hans, I know that you've taken a look at Judge Amy Coney Barrett's rulings during her time as a judge on the Seventh Circuit. From looking at those prior rulings, what kind of justice do you think she would be?
She has made it very clear that she believes it is not the job of justices to do policy. That is the job of Congress and the legislature. And if you look at her court decisions, you will see that what she does is interpret the Constitution and apply federal statutes the way they're written and the way Congress laid out these statutes and intended them to be applied. She has avoided twisting or rewriting the language because some folks might think that that would achieve a better policy result in the end, and she has avoided doing that. If you look at that, it's also very clear that she really doesn't pay attention to who the defendants are and who the plaintiffs are in cases, because she's simply applying the law the way it's written. And that is exactly the kind of judge that we want.
She also spoke about the students that she taught at Notre Dame and the lawyers who've clerked for her. Let's talk for a moment about what her nomination represents and the influence that she's already had.
Yeah, you know, it was really amazing. Not only has she been considered by students as one of the best professors at Notre Dame, but, you know, every single law clerk that clerked with her when she clerked at the Supreme Court, including law clerks for the liberal justices, every single one of them supported her. And so she's going to be actually the first working mother on the Supreme Court and one of the few justices who did not go to Harvard and Yale. And that's the kind of thing I think we want, that kind of diversity on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. Judge Barrett is President Trump's third Supreme Court nominee. How significant is that in terms of his judicial legacy?
This is very important. You know, ever since Justice Kennedy left, Justice Kennedy used to be the swing vote. He would occasionally side with the liberals. Unfortunately, Chief Justice Roberts has taken over that role, and sometimes in what are politically controversial decisions, he has swung over and voted with the liberal justices. Hopefully, with Amy Coney Barrett, she will be a vote to offset when the Chief Justice does that and will actually apply the Constitution the way it should be applied.
Well, Hans, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your analysis. Hans Spakovsky, that is, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks again, Hans.
Thanks for having me.
President Donald Trump is beginning a two-day campaign swing through North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. All three states are considered critical to winning the election.
And if I don't always seem to be playing by the rules of the Washington establishment, it's because I was elected to fight for you harder than any other president has ever fought.
The president challenged social media companies to stop silencing conservative voices and articles like the one that claims Democratic rival Joe Biden was lying about his son Hunter's foreign business dealings.
Joe Biden is a corrupt politician, and he has been corrupt for many years, and everybody in Washington knew it.
Biden's campaign has denied elements of the New York Post story and questioned its sources. The two presidential nominees were supposed to meet for their second debate tonight, but when it was canceled, they both scheduled separate televised town halls. Democratic vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris is suspending in-person events after two people associated with the campaign tested positive for the coronavirus. Harris was supposed to travel to North Carolina today, but the campaign says her travel plans will be suspended for several days until at least Monday. The campaign says Democratic candidate Joe Biden had no exposure to COVID-19. And coming up later in the show, we examine the state of the 2020 campaign with Chris Bedford, author and senior editor at The Federalist. Tonight on EWTN's The World Over, host Raymond Arroyo talks with Vice President Mike Pence. Among the topics, the nomination of Catholic Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
First, let me say, like our president, I'm pro-life, and I don't apologize for it. I couldn't be more proud to be part of the most pro-life administration in American history. But President Trump nominated Judge Amy Coney Barrett because she is a brilliant jurist who will uphold the Constitution, who will interpret laws as written and won't legislate from the bench. I wouldn't presume how she would rule on any case.
The World Over airs tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. For other showtimes, check out our website, EWTN.com. The president of Kyrgyzstan resigned today following protests over a disputed parliamentary election. President Siranbay Jembekov announced his resignation to end the political turmoil in the Central Asian country. The prime minister also resigned right after the contested vote earlier this month. The president's resignation still has to be approved by parliament. Protesters are also demanding that the governing body be dissolved.
It was a complete acceptance by all member states. No one opposed any kind of reluctancy.
The European Union agrees to impose sanctions on 6 Russian officials and an organization over the poisoning of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. He became ill on a flight in August. Tests showed he was poisoned with a Soviet-era nerve agent. Pope Francis launches the Global Compact on Education today in Rome, an initiative to promote high-quality education for all. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn has that story.
Cari fratelli e sorelle.
To educate is an act of hope, the words of Pope Francis. And today, here at the Lateran University in Rome, the Global Compact on Education was launched. This initiative is a call by Pope Francis that education may become a creator of fraternity, peace and justice. Leaders in different sectors of education and students in third-level education came together to share their thoughts and ideas of how education can be used as a stronger force for the common good. Cardinal Giuseppe Versaldi from the Vatican Congregation for Catholic Education was one of the speakers.
One of the most important difficulties and also challenge for us is to be able to find a language, to find the capacity to communicate that the truth coming from the gospel. Without this integration between truth and freedom and happiness, it's difficult that the young people may accept the gospel, which is the root of the true happiness, of self-realization.
Quello che vuoi è essere grande.
And many young people were in attendance and had the opportunity to make their voices heard.
I think we should first study and change ourselves in order to be able to change people or to inspire people. And I think more concretely, as an educator, because first I was like an educator for kids, we should put love in everything that we do and do it with passion and just be there and aspire to be a change by giving example.
Mi stimola particolarmente l'invito del Papa. It was a great opportunity to form our new generations to build the world of peace.
The young people came from all over the world, giving an insight into the challenges to education in their region.
I think the big challenge is the war, because as the Pope said, there is war in the world, but in Africa, there are children who cannot go to the school because of the war, because of the poverty.
Pope Francis addressed the group in a video message where he urged that the individual be put at the center of every educational process.
Della cultura dello scarto. Grazie.
Concluding his video message for the young people gathered here today, Pope Francis pivoted from the coronavirus pandemic to what he believes is the real pandemic of our times. It's what he calls the throwaway culture, which doesn't respect the dignity of human life. And he is hoping that the people gathered here will be able to use education as a tool to change that. In Rome, Colin Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, less than 3 weeks until Election Day. We break down the campaigns. As I mentioned earlier, with just 19 days until the election, President Donald Trump and Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden will speak to voters tonight in dueling town halls on different networks. Join me now on Skype to take a look at where things stand ahead of next month's presidential election is Chris Bedford, senior editor for The Federalist. Chris, welcome back. Always good to have you on. So tonight, instead of a face-to-face debate, we're going to have separate town halls giving both President Trump and Joe Biden a chance to speak directly to voters. Let's start with the president. What does he need to do tonight?
I think President Trump needs to calm down some of his supporters who were upset by his debate performance. The first Donald Trump-Joe Biden debate was a cause for a lot of excitement amongst Donald Trump's supporters and the people who'd been waiting for him to come out and really list off his accomplishments and go through all the different things he said he was going to do, and which he has done. And this is not just here in the Beltway, and it's not just friends and family. It's going out with other reporters from the Federalists, going to Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, talking to people, and there's a widespread feeling of disappointment in how the president did. For a lot of his supporters, he is their champion. He's someone who's fighting for them. And to see him not do well in the big title match that they expected him to win, it didn't sit well with them. I don't think he lost too much of the base, but it certainly shook them. And I think tonight will be an opportunity for him to try and list off exactly what his administration has accomplished in a way that he has done so in the past.
What about Joe Biden? What do you think he needs to do to convince voters he's the one to vote for on Election Day?
If he can have a back-to-back performance where he is not calling into the lid at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., where he's actually out, where he's forming complete sentences, it's a very low bar for the vice president. But we hadn't seen him in public as voters in weeks and weeks and weeks up to that debate. And during that debate, he did fairly well. He had some good lines, and he appeared well. He communicated well. The same thing during his DNC speech. Now, these are really brief moments in what should be a daily interactions with him that we aren't seeing at all. But he still wants to help assure some of his voters and some of the press and other people who have been backing him that he is a guy who they can count on, who's reliable, who's capable of governing. Because right now, his opponents and even some of his supporters are doubting that.
Chris, let's talk about the polls now. Many, if not all of them, show Biden in the lead. I know you recently took a look at Michigan and Wisconsin for the Federalists. What did you find?
I found that there's been a certain switch in the GOP across these states. We went to Wisconsin, we went to Michigan, and a little bit of time in Minnesota, but more so in the two former. We found that there is a definite switch that we've seen where a lot of suburban college-educated women who used to form a sort of basis of the Republican Party, be reliable voters for the Republican Party, are actually turned off from President Donald Trump and the new populist surge, largely by issues such as tone. However, we also found that a lot of those blue Democrats, huge swaths of them, who had originally switched, who voted for Barack Obama, who were traditional Democrats, who'd voted Democrat their whole life, and had switched to Donald Trump, were even more committed now. We also saw that there was a lot more road signs when previously there never were, although that's typically a sign of party organization. And local politicians we talked to and all across these different swing districts, places that voted for Obama and then for Donald Trump, said that people had been afraid to admit and refusing to admit that they were voting for Donald Trump in 2016, yet he won. Now people are very active, very vocal. There's a lot of excitement for him over there. And if I was with the Trump campaign, I would say that it was a good thing for them.
Well, as we draw closer to the November election, there are growing charges of censorship by social media platforms, in particular Twitter. And today we learned the Senate Judiciary Committee will vote next week to subpoena its CEO, Jack Dorsey. How significant do you think that is? And what are your thoughts as this all unfolds?
It's been an unbelievable 24 hours of news. I mean, I guess that's hard to stand out in 2020 when it seems like there's a new news cycle every single day. But this was a bombshell story about corruption and problems and real salaciousness involving the Biden family and possibly Vice President Biden himself. That, like many other bombshells, could have disappeared after a single news cycle. Now, what made this different was a complete and insane reaction from Twitter and Facebook, who essentially pulled the curtain back from the wizard and did what they've been accused of doing. Not only did they censor the story in the New York Post, which is the fourth largest publication in America, but then they actually went after the personal account of the White House spokeswoman. They went after liberal reporters. They went after conservative reporters. They even went after the House Judiciary Committee, which is elected by Americans, saying it censoring their material. That's a massive, massive, massive overreach. And I predict it's only a matter of time before we start to see them go after even harder against the President of the United States. Now this is a major news story that people are going to pay attention to. The problem for Republicans is what exactly are they going to do and how are they going to hurt these corporations, punish these corporations, hold these very powerful corporations accountable for what they're doing while still protecting free speech.
Yeah, Chris, very interesting. We'll see how this all shakes out. Christopher Bedford, senior editor for The Federalist. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.
An appeals court has struck down a Texas law that bans a popular second trimester abortion procedure. It says the measure unduly burdens a woman's constitutional right to have an abortion. The state is expected to appeal the decision. The Diocese of Brooklyn is set to appear in a federal court today in its lawsuit against New York's new restrictions on public gatherings. Under the plan, some indoor masses are limited to 10 people. The diocese says the measure holds churches to a stricter standard than businesses that are considered non-essential. For more on this story, including reaction from Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio from the Diocese of Brooklyn, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Up next, October is Rosary Month. How faithful around the world are praying to the Blessed Virgin. Catholics devote this month to the Rosary. On October 7th, the Church celebrated the feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. The faithful are uniting in prayer and saying the Rosary around the world. Correspondent Mark Irons reports on the devotion to Mary that leads to Jesus.
What is the Rosary? It's the gospel on a string. Because what do? We meditate on the key moments of our Lord's life.
Monsignor Charles Pope is holding on to what he calls a weapon, one that provides us with spiritual protection. The pastor of Holy Comforters St. Cyprian Church in Washington, D.C., tells me why he recites the prayers counted on these beads.
My personal story is I really came back to the church through the Rosary. You know, I had sort of fallen away.
He was a college student at the time, and his grandmother suggested he start praying the Rosary.
I can't say exactly how, but Our Lady brought me back.
Monsignor Pope says the goal of Mary is to lead us to Jesus. During walks in his parish neighborhood, he'll pray the Rosary, meditating on the gospel message of the different mysteries or offering up special intentions.
I mean, why do I love Mary? Because Jesus loved Mary. Why do I entrust myself to her care? Because Jesus did.
And not far from Monsignor Pope's parish in the nation's capital, a national shrine dedicated to the Blessed Virgin. Here in the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, you'll find many chapels dedicated to Mary, including this one depicting Our Lady of Pompeii. And she's holding the baby Jesus, and both are holding rosaries. This chapel was used earlier this month as part of a virtual rosary hosted by U.S. bishops and lay people uniting the nation in prayer.
Oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell.
And this weekend, another rosary event hopes to unite the world's youth in prayer.
We've had interest and registration in about 80 countries already.
Joop Koopman works for Aid to the Church in Need. The charitable organization is hosting the annual event this Sunday and Monday. You can sign up and pledge to pray the Rosary for peace and an end to the pandemic. Pope Francis has promoted this special call to global prayer.
It brings people together. It unifies us. It connects us.
And a national Rosary rally was held in D.C. this past weekend. Monsignor Pope took part.
It's like holding Our Lady's hand.
In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
And finally tonight, a surge in coronavirus infections in Italy is not stopping pilgrims who want to visit the tomb of a recently beatified young computer programmer. There is such demand that the time to venerate the tomb of Blessed Carlo Acutis has been extended. Officials say the veneration will continue until next Monday. It was previously scheduled to end on Saturday. Thousands of pilgrims have made the trip, and more large groups are requesting to do so. One priest says young people in particular are visiting because they want to experience God and change their lives. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.